Captain Haiyan Wu stood in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, his hands clenched behind his back. The room stretched upward like a cathedral, filled with representatives from hundreds of alien species. Some floated in containment fields, others sat on pedestals designed for their unique bodies. But Haiyan Wu's eyes were fixed on the oldest beings in the galaxy, the architects. They looked almost like tall, thin trees made of silver metal and crystal. Their faces had no expressions, just smooth surfaces that somehow conveyed ancient wisdom. Elder Vorm, the lead architect, had just finished speaking about trade routes and mineral rights. Haiyan Wu had heard enough. Why can't we leave our solar system? Haiyan Wu asked, his voice echoing through the chamber. 50 years you've let us sit on this council. 50 years you've treated us like children. Every other species can travel freely. Why not us? The chamber fell silent. Even the translator devices seemed to pause. Other species shifted uncomfortably. Nobody questioned the architects. They had been guiding the galaxy for over 200 million years. Elder Vorm turned toward Haiyan Wu. When the architect spoke, his voice sounded like wind through metal chimes. Captain, your species is young. You need more time to develop. That's not an answer, Haiyan Wu said. The Venth were allowed to travel after only 10 years on the council. The Karathi after 20. We've waited 5 times longer. What makes Earth different? Another architect, smaller than Vorm, leaned forward. Perhaps it is time to tell them something, Elder. They will discover it eventually. Vorm remained still for a long moment. Then he spoke words that made Haiyan Wu's blood run cold. Your species does not understand what sleeps beneath your world. We do not avoid Earth out of fear of you. We avoid it because of what you unknowingly guard. What does that mean? Haiyan Wu demanded, but Vorm simply turned away. This session is concluded. Back on the human diplomatic ship, Haiyan Wu found his science officer G1 already working. Her station was covered in holographic displays showing ancient texts and star charts. G1 had been with him for 10 years, and he had learned to recognize that intense look on her face. She was on to something. Did you hear what he said? Haiyan Wu asked. I recorded everything, G1 replied, not looking up from her work. I've been searching through every piece of architect data we've ever collected. Haiyan Wu, they've been lying to us. Or at least hiding things. She pulled up an image, a section of an ancient architect text that had been partially translated years ago. Look at this. This document is over 50 million years old. It mentions Earth by its galactic coordinates. But see this symbol here? It means forbidden or quarantined. They've been avoiding Earth since before humans even existed. Haiyan Wu leaned closer. Before we existed? That doesn't make sense. It gets stranger. G1 opened another file. I cross-referenced our geological surveys with architect probe data. Every 100,000 years, they send an unmanned probe to Earth, just to observe from orbit, nothing more. But here's the thing. None of those probes ever came back. None? Not one. Over the past 5 million years, they've sent 50 probes. All vanished. No distress signals, no debris, nothing. They just disappear when they get close to Earth. Haiyan Wu felt a chill run down his spine. When was the last probe sent? G1's fingers moved across her controls. The date appeared on the screen. 99,847 years ago. They stared at each other. Haiyan Wu knew what that meant. If the architects sent probes every 100,000 years, another one was due soon. Or should have been sent already. They're not sending another one, Haiyan Wu said quietly. They're too afraid. Afraid of what? G1 asked. Earth was primitive back then. Humans were barely using stone tools. What could possibly threaten a species that has survived for 200 million years? Haiyan Wu walked to the window, and looked out at the stars. Earth was out there somewhere, 40 light years away. Home. He had been born on Earth, grown up in the rebuilt city of Bizon, joined the space program as soon as he was old enough. He had always dreamed of exploring the galaxy. Now he was learning that the galaxy was afraid of his home. "We need to find out," he said. "Whatever is on Earth, whatever they're hiding, we deserve to know." G1 hesitated. "The Council will never approve an investigation. And if we go back to Earth and start digging without permission, it could cause a diplomatic crisis. Then we'll ask for forgiveness instead of permission." Haiyan-Wu turned back to her. "Contact Earth Command. Use the secure channel. Tell them we need a research team assembled quietly. Xenarchaeologists, geologists, military support, everything. Where will we even start looking?" G1 asked. Haiyan-Wu pointed at her star charts. "You said the probes disappeared when they got close to Earth. Pull up their last known positions. Find the pattern. Whatever they were looking at, whatever made them vanish, that's where we start." G1 worked in silence for several minutes. Then she stopped, her face going pale. "Haiyan-Wu, look at this." The holographic display showed Earth with dozens of red dots marking the last positions of the vanished probes. They weren't random. They formed a pattern, a circle around specific locations on Earth's surface: Antarctica, the deep ocean trenches, the Himalayan mountains, places where humans rarely went, places that were still largely unexplored. They were monitoring something, G1 whispered. Something at those locations. Something that destroyed their probes. Haiyan-Wu made his decision. Set course for Earth. Maximum speed. And G1? Don't tell anyone else what we found. Not yet. If the architects learn we're investigating, they might try to stop us. As the ship turned toward home, Haiyan-Wu couldn't shake the feeling that they were making a terrible mistake. But humanity had lived in ignorance long enough. Whatever secret Earth held, whatever ancient horror the architects feared, they would face it. They had to, because if they didn't, they would never be free. The Antarctic wind howled across the ice shelf, but inside the research station, the air was warm and filled with the hum of machinery. Haiyan-Wu watched through the observation window as massive drilling equipment worked its way through layers of ancient ice. They had been drilling for 3 weeks now, deeper than any human excavation had ever gone. G1 stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the depth readings. "We're at 4,000 meters now. The ice this deep is over 3 million years old." "And the anomaly?" Haiyan-Wu asked. "Still there. Getting stronger, actually." G1 pulled up a scanner display. "Whatever is down there, it's massive. The size of a small city. And Haiyan-Wu, the readings don't match any known geology. The density is wrong. The thermal signature is wrong. It's like nothing we've ever seen." Behind them, Tae-Sung looked up from his workstation. The linguist had been with them for 2 weeks, brought in when they discovered the first strange symbols carved into the deep ice. He was young, barely 30, but brilliant. "I finished analyzing the markings we found at 3,000 meters. They're definitely artificial. Not human, not architect, not any language in the galactic database. Can you read them?" Haiyan-Wu asked. "Partially. The structure is mathematical, which helps. But the meaning?" Tae-Sung hesitated. "It's a warning. I'm certain of that much. The symbols repeat the same concepts over and over. Do not disturb. Return to surface. The cycle must not break." "What cycle?" "I don't know yet. The word they use doesn't have a direct translation. It could mean cycle, season, harvest, or growth. Maybe all of those at once." A technician's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain, we've broken through. There's a chamber down there." Haiyan-Wu felt his heart race. "Get the exploration team ready." We're going down. 2 hours later, Haiyan-Wu stood in an elevator cage that descended through the drill shaft. With him were Ji-1, Tae-Sung, and 4 security officers. The walls of ice gradually gave way to rock, and then to something else entirely. "Look at this," Ji-1 breathed, pressing her hand against the wall. The material was smooth, almost organic looking, and it gave off a faint blue glow. "This isn't rock. It's not metal either. I've never seen anything like it." The elevator stopped. The doors opened onto a vast chamber that made Haiyan-Wu's breath catch in his throat. The space was enormous, easily 200 meters across, and every surface was covered in the same glowing material. But what drew his attention were the symbols. They were everywhere, carved deep into the walls, flowing across the ceiling, spiraling down support columns that looked more like massive bones than architecture. The symbols pulsed with that same blue light, creating patterns that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. "Tae-Sung," Haiyan-Wu said quietly, "can you read this?" The linguist walked forward slowly, his scanner recording everything. His hands were shaking. "There's so much. It's like a library, or a warning beacon." He moved to the nearest wall, his fingers tracing the symbols without quite touching them. "This section here, it's repeating a name, or a title. The gardeners." Gardeners? That's the closest translation. Beings who plant, who cultivate, who tend to growth. Tae-Sung moved to another section. "And this part is about Earth. But they don't call it Earth. They call it Garden 792. Ji-1 had her scanner aimed at the floor. "Haiyan-Wu, you need to see this. The material this structure is made from. It's organic. Not just organic. It's alive. Or was alive. The cellular structure is preserved. This whole thing was grown, not built. Grown by who? The gardeners, I think," Tae-Sung said. He had moved deeper into the chamber, following a line of symbols that spiraled downward. "This is a record. A history. They came here millions of years ago. They seeded this planet with life, engineered the oceans, designed the first organisms, and set everything in motion." "Are you saying humans were created by aliens?" one of the security officers asked. "Not just humans, everything. Every plant, every animal, every microbe. Earth is artificial. A designed ecosystem." Tae-Sung's voice was hollow. "And according to this, we weren't the first iteration. They've reset this world multiple times, wiping out life and starting over when the design wasn't working correctly." Haiyan-Wu felt sick. Why would they do that? Ji-1 was reading her scanner, her face pale in the blue light. "I think I know. Look at this section here. Tae-Sung, what does this symbol mean?" The linguist looked where she was pointing. "That's the word I mentioned before. The one that means harvest or cycle or season. It's next to energy readings," Ji-1 said. "Massive energy readings. This structure isn't just a monument or a research station. It's a collector. Or was supposed to be. Haiyan-Wu, I think Earth is a farm. And humans are the crop." The chamber fell silent except for the hum of their equipment. Haiyan-Wu wanted to deny it, to say it was impossible. But as he looked at the symbols covering the walls, at the organic architecture that had been grown beneath the ice millions of years before humans existed, he knew Ji-1 was right. What were they harvesting? He asked quietly. "Consciousness," Tae-Sung said. He was staring at a large symbol at the center of the chamber. This word appears hundreds of times. It means thought, awareness, soul, mind. They were growing thinking beings. Billions of them. And then they would harvest us, Ji-1 finished. Kill everyone and collect whatever energy or essence or consciousness we produce. Then reset the planet and do it all over again. One of the security officers stepped forward. "Captain, with respect, we need to leave. Now, if this structure is part of some kind of harvesting system, being down here might activate it. But before anyone could move, the blue light in the chamber suddenly intensified. The symbols began pulsing faster, creating waves of light that flowed across the walls. A deep vibration ran through the floor, a sound so low it was more felt than heard. What did we do? Haiyan Wu shouted over the growing noise. Nothing. Ji1 yelled back. We didn't touch anything. But the structure was definitely activating. The organic walls began to shift, patterns emerging that hadn't been visible before. And at the center of the chamber, something was rising from the floor. A pillar of the same glowing material, covered in more symbols, more complex than any they had seen before. Taesung stumbled toward it, his scanner forgotten. It's a message. A transmission. It's sending a signal. Haiyan Wu, it's calling something. Calling them back. Calling who? The gardeners. It's telling them the harvest can begin. In that moment, deep beneath the Antarctic ice, in a structure built by beings who treated planets like farms, humanity learned the truth. Earth was never theirs. It had never been theirs. They were crops that had been planted, grown, and forgotten. And now, after millions of years, the farmers were being called home to collect what they had sown. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called within hours of the Antarctic discovery. Every species was present, their representatives filling the grand chamber with anxious chatter. But the center of attention was the human delegation, standing before Elder Vorum with evidence that could shatter the foundations of galactic civilization. Haiyan Wu stood tall despite his exhaustion. He had not slept since returning from Antarctica. None of them had. You knew, he said, his voice carrying across the chamber. You've always known what Earth really is. Elder Vorum remained still, his crystalline surface reflecting the lights of 1,000 species watching. Captain Haiyan Wu, you have violated the quarantine protocols. You were forbidden from investigating. Answer the question. The shout came from Min Seo, the human military strategist standing beside Haiyan Wu. She was shorter than him, compact and fierce, with eyes that had seen too many battles. You've watched our world for millions of years. You knew we were living on a farm. You knew something was coming to harvest us. And you said nothing. Murmurs spread through the council. Other species were listening now, many of them looking at the architects with new suspicion. The architects had always been trusted, always been the wise guides. But wisdom built on lies was no wisdom at all. Please, said a representative from the Karathi, a species that looked like floating jellyfish made of light. Elder Vorum, we need to understand. If what the humans say is true, if there are beings that harvest entire worlds, how many other planets are at risk? Vorum was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he moved toward the center of the chamber. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight of sorrow that Haiyan Wu had never heard from an architect before. 237 million years ago, we were not the architects. We were simply people, living on our world, believing we were special. We had achieved space travel. We had mapped our galaxy. We thought we understood the universe. Vorum paused. Then they came. The chamber fell completely silent. We called them the gardeners, because that was the only word that made sense. They did not conquer. They did not negotiate. They simply arrived and they harvested. In 3 days, half of our population was dead. Not killed violently, but drained. Their consciousness, their life force, everything that made them who they were, was collected like grain at harvest time. Ji1 felt tears on her face. How did you survive? We ran. The half that remained fled in whatever ships we could build, leaving our world behind. We watched from orbit as the gardeners finished their work. When they left, our planet was empty. Not destroyed, but reset. New life would grow there eventually. A new cycle would begin. But we would never go home. Another architect, one Haiyan Wu had not seen before, stepped forward. We spent millions of years hiding, moving from system to system. We learned that the gardeners had done this countless times. They seeded life across the galaxy, let it grow and develop consciousness, then returned every 100,000 years to harvest. They treated entire civilizations like crops in a field. "Why didn't you warn anyone?" Haiyan Wu asked. "Why didn't you tell the other species?" "Because knowing changes nothing," Vorum said. "The gardeners are beyond any technology we understand. They do not use ships as we know them. They do not fight wars. They simply arrive, harvest, and leave. Fighting them is like a blade of wheat fighting the farmer's scythe. So, you just accepted it?" Min Sio's voice was hard with anger. "You built this council. You guided all these species to grow and develop, knowing that someday the gardeners would come back and kill them all?" "We built the council to create strength in numbers," Vorum replied. "We hoped that if enough species united, if enough technology was developed, perhaps we could resist. Or at least survive. It was all we could do. And Earth." Haiyan Wu pressed. "What makes Earth special? Why were we quarantined?" This time, a different architect answered, the smaller one who had suggested telling them the truth before. "Earth was scheduled for harvest 100,000 years ago. We know this because we have intercepted gardener signals before, learned to recognize their patterns. A harvester was sent to Earth, but it never returned." The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Representatives from dozens of species spoke at once, their translation devices creating a chaos of sound. Silence. Vorum's voice cut through the noise. "Earth is the only world we know of where a gardener harvester failed. We do not know why. We do not know how. All we know is that something on Earth stopped them. Something powerful enough to defeat a being that has harvested thousands of worlds." G1 stepped forward. "The structure we found in Antarctica. It's part of the harvesting system, isn't it? But it's damaged. Corrupted somehow." "We believe so," Vorum confirmed. "Our analysis of the signals suggests the harvester was destroyed or trapped. But we could never investigate. Every probe we sent disappeared. We had to content ourselves with watching from a distance as your species evolved, hoping you would remain ignorant of what slept beneath your feet. But we woke it up," Haiyan Wu said quietly. "When we entered that structure, we triggered something. It sent a signal. Yes, a signal we have been monitoring." Vorum's surface seemed to dim. "The signal is traveling through subspace. Based on its trajectory and the known locations of gardener fleets, we estimate they will reach Earth in approximately 47 days. Min Xia's tactical mind was already working. What are we facing? Numbers, capabilities, weaknesses? The last recorded gardener fleet that we observed contained 17 world ships. Each one is the size of a small moon. They can sterilize a planet from orbit in hours. They have weapons that can collapse stars. And their harvesting technology can drain the consciousness from every living being on a world simultaneously. And we're supposed to fight that?" One of the security officers whispered. "You cannot fight it," Vorum said. "No one can. The best you can do is evacuate as many humans as possible before they arrive." But Haiyan Wu was shaking his head. "No, there's something you're not considering. Something stopped them last time. Something on Earth killed or trapped a gardener harvester. That thing is still there. And it's awake now," G1 added. "The structure was activating when we left. Whatever is down there, it knows the gardeners are coming back." Min Xio looked at Haiyan Wu. "You're thinking we can use it. Whatever it is, it's already proven it can fight them. Use it?" Vorum sounded horrified. "You don't understand. Something that can defeat a gardener is not your ally. It's potentially worse than the gardeners themselves. That's why we never investigated. That's why we hoped you would never find it. But we did find it, Hyanwu said. And now we have 47 days to figure out what it is and how to survive. With or without your help. The Galactic Council chamber fell silent. Every species present understood what this meant. Earth was about to become a battlefield between two cosmic horrors. And humanity, young and aggressive and ignorant of their place in the universe, was going to stand right in the middle of it. The descent took 6 hours. Hyanwu sat in the transport pod with Ji-1, Tae-sung, and 3 architect scientists who had volunteered to join them. Outside the small windows, walls of rock and organic material slid past as they dropped deeper into Earth than any human had ever gone. "We're at 40 kilometers now," Ji-1 reported, her voice tight with stress. "Pressure outside is incredible. Temperature is rising. We're past the crust, entering the mantle." One of the architect scientists, who had asked to be called Shen, watched the scanner displays. The structure continues downward. It's like a root system spraying through your planet's interior. Whatever this thing is, it's massive beyond comprehension. They had been following the structure from Antarctica for days now, mapping its extent through seismic scans and deep penetrating radar. What they found was terrifying. The organic material didn't just exist beneath Antarctica. It spread across the entire planet, forming a network that touched every continent, every ocean. Tendrils of it reached down through the mantle toward Earth's core. "How long has this been here?" Hyanwu asked. "The geological evidence suggests at least 100 million years," Shen replied. "Possibly much longer. It's ancient, older than most species in the galaxy." The pod shuddered as it pushed through a pocket of molten rock. Warning lights flashed, but the shields held. They were designed by the architects, built to withstand pressures and temperatures that would crush any normal human vessel. "I'm picking up something," Ji-1 said suddenly. "Ahead of us. A chamber. It's massive." The pod broke through into open space, and Hyanwu's breath caught. They were inside a bubble of air, somehow preserved in the middle of Earth's mantle. The walls were covered in the same organic material, but here it was different. It pulsed with light, not the cold blue of the Antarctic structure, but a warm, red glow like dying embers dot, and at the center of the chamber, suspended in what looked like crystallized energy, was something that made Hyanwu's mind struggle to process what he was seeing. It was huge, easily the size of a city building, and it was both machine and organism. Parts of it looked like a ship, with curves and angles that suggested intentional design. But other parts were clearly alive, or had been alive. Flesh and metal were fused together in ways that seemed impossible. And through it all, spreading like an infection, were dark veins of something else. Something that didn't belong. "Is that the harvester?" Tae-sung whispered. "What's left of it?" Shen said, his voice filled with awe and horror. "Look at the damage. Something didn't just stop this vessel. Something consumed it." Ji-1 was scanning frantically. "The dark veins, they're the same material we found in the Antarctic structure. But they're not gardener technology. They're something else. Something that infected the harvester when it came here." "Infected?" Hyanwu moved closer to the window. "You mean like a disease?" "More like a parasite. Or a predator." Ji-1 pulled up a comparison of the two materials on her display. The gardener vessel is incredibly advanced. Technology and biology merged perfectly. But this other material, it's crude by comparison. Almost primitive. Yet it won the fight. It spread through the harvester like a cancer and trapped it here. One of the other architect scientists, Quan, was analyzing the crystallized energy surrounding the vessel. This is a prison. The infection couldn't destroy the harvester completely, so it trapped it, sealed it away where it couldn't complete its mission or send for help. But where did the infection come from? Hyan-Woo asked. I think I know, Tae-Seung said. He was reading something on his tablet, comparing it with the symbols they had recorded in Antarctica. The warnings we found, they weren't written by the gardeners. They were written by whatever infected the harvester. Look at this. He projected the translation onto the pod's main display. The words were broken, difficult to parse, but their meaning was clear enough. Not food. Will not be harvested. We fought the void. We survived the void. Void touched us, changed us. Now we are the harvesters. Come and feed. The pod fell silent. Outside, the trapped vessel pulsed with that red light, and Hyan-Woo realized with growing horror that the pulse was regular. Like a heartbeat. It's still alive, he said. After 100,000 years, it's still alive. Shen's voice was barely a whisper. The gardeners travel between galaxies. They cross the void of intergalactic space where there should be nothing. But something lives out there in that emptiness. Something that even the gardeners fear. And this harvester encountered it. The infection brought it here, G1 continued. And when the harvester tried to harvest Earth, the infection spread. It merged with Earth's biosphere. Over millions of years, it became part of the planet itself. Part of life here. Hyan-Woo felt a creeping realization. Part of us? You're saying this thing is part of humanity? Look at human history, Shen said quietly. Your species is different from most others. You're aggressive, territorial, incredibly difficult to subjugate. You wage wars constantly. You push yourselves to extremes. You have an instinct for survival that borders on the irrational. We evolved that way. Hyan-Woo protested. Did you? Or were you shaped that way? Shen gestured at the trapped vessel. This infection learned from the gardeners. It learned about harvesting, about using life as a resource. Then it began shaping Earth's evolution, creating life in its own image. Creating survivors. Creating hunters. Sujin, the psychological warfare expert who had joined them via communication link from the surface, spoke up. It makes sense from a strategic perspective. The infection couldn't fight the gardeners with technology, so it created a biological weapon. It made humans. Made us violent and creative and stubborn. Made us into something that wouldn't surrender even when facing certain death. That's insane, Hyan-Woo said. But even as he spoke, he knew it fit. It explained so much about humanity's nature, about why they were different from the other species in the galaxy. Suddenly, the trapped vessel pulsed brighter. The organic material on the chamber walls began to shift, creating new patterns. And through the pod speakers came a sound that made everyone freeze. It was a voice. Not quite human, not quite mechanical, but something in between. And it spoke in simple, clear words. Gardeners returning. Detected their signal. 43 days until arrival. It's talking to us, Tae-Seung breathed. You know, Hyan-Woo said to the entity, you knew they were coming back. Always knew. Waited. Grew stronger. Created children. Created you. G1 stepped forward. You infected the harvester. You spread through Earth. You shaped humanity. Why? To survive. To fight. To hunt. Gardeners harvest thinking beings. I harvest gardeners. Fair trade. The chamber fell silent. Then Hyan-Woo asked the question that everyone was thinking. Can you stop them? Can you protect Earth? The entity pulsed, considering. Yes, the price is high. Must rise from core. Must merge with children. Become one. Show you what you truly are. Merge? Sujin asked. What does that mean? I shaped your evolution. I am part of you. You are part of me. To fight, we must acknowledge this. Accept it. Become what you were made to be. Menzisio's voice came over the communication link, hard and practical. You're asking humanity to accept that we're weapons, that our entire existence was engineered by something that wants to use us against the gardeners. Not use, not use. We are one. You are me grown separate. I am you concentrated. Together, we are something gardeners never expected. Something they cannot harvest. Haiyan Wu looked at the others. In their eyes, he saw the same fear and determination he felt. Earth was home to 8 billion humans. Billions more animals and plants. All of it might be artificial. All of it might be part of some cosmic horror's plan, but it was still home. It was still worth protecting. What happens if we refuse? He asked. Gardeners harvest you. I remain trapped. Both of us die. Gardeners continue forever. And if we accept, we rise. We fight. Maybe we win. Maybe we become something new. Something free. The red light pulsed like a heartbeat, waiting for an answer. The Gardener fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system like a wound in space itself. 17 world ships, each one a twisted fusion of organic matter and incomprehensible technology. They moved with the slow certainty of ancient predators that had never known defeat. Haiyan Wu watched from the bridge of the human flagship as the fleet approached. Around Earth, every military vessel from every nation had assembled. The Galactic Council had sent ships too, though many had stayed back, afraid of what was about to happen. The architects floated nearby in their crystal vessels, witnesses to something they had never dared attempt. They'll be in harvesting range in 2 hours, Mencio reported. Her tactical display showed the Gardener ships spreading out, preparing to surround Earth completely. Our weapons won't even scratch them. The Council ships are more advanced, but according to the architects, nothing they have will work either. Then we follow the plan, Haiyan Wu said quietly, below them. On Earth's surface, the decision had been made. It had taken 3 days of debate, protests, fear, and finally acceptance. Humanity had voted. Not unanimously, never unanimously, but by a clear majority. They would accept the entity's offer. They would let it rise. G-1 was monitoring the seismic stations around the world. It's beginning. The entity is moving toward the surface. The first sign was the earthquakes. Not destructive, but persistent, rolling across every continent. Then the oceans began to change color, a faint red tint spreading through the water. Plants everywhere started growing faster, their leaves turning toward the sky as if sensing something approaching. I can feel it, Taesung said suddenly. He was standing near a window, his hand pressed against the glass. Can't you? It's like something is waking up inside my head. Haiyan Wu felt it too. A presence, vast and ancient, unfurling in the back of his mind. Not controlling him, not forcing anything, but simply there. Connected. He looked around the bridge and saw the same recognition on every human face. It's in all of us, G1 whispered. Just like it said. We were always connected to it. Now we're just becoming aware of the connection. On Earth below, the entity emerged. Not from one location, but from everywhere at once. It rose from the soil, flowed up from the oceans, manifested in every living thing. Plants, animals, and especially humans became temporary, extensions of something vast beyond comprehension. Dong Haiyan sat in the cockpit of his fighter, part of a squadron positioned between Earth and the approaching enemy. He was a pilot, one of the best, but he had never felt anything like this. His awareness suddenly expanded. He could see through the eyes of every other pilot in his squadron. No, more than that. He could sense every human on every ship, every person on the planet below. Is everyone feeling this? Someone asked over the communication channel. Yes, came dozens of replies at once. They were still individuals. Dong Haiyan could still feel his own thoughts, his own fears, his own determination. But he was also part of something larger now. A collective consciousness that spanned the entire human species. And at the center of it, vast and strange and undeniably present, was the entity. They're here. It spoke through all of them at once. The gardeners have come to harvest. Show them what happens when the crop fights back. The gardener ships entered firing range. Beams of energy lanced out, weapons that could boil oceans and crack continents. They struck Earth's atmosphere and simply stopped. The entity had spread itself across the planet like a shield, every living thing connected into a defensive network. But the entity wasn't just defending. It was attacking. Dong Haiyan's fighter moved without him consciously commanding it. His hands danced across the controls in patterns he had never trained for, executing maneuvers that should have been impossible. Around him, the entire squadron moved as one, a perfectly coordinated dance of metal and fire. They dove toward the nearest gardener ship, and as they approached, something changed. The fighters themselves began to shift, their hulls growing organic elements, adapting in real time. The entity was learning, evolving, using human technology as a template, but improving it beyond recognition. Weapons free, Mincio ordered, but the order was unnecessary. Every human pilot, soldier, and crew member already knew what to do. They were thinking with billions of minds. The human weapons struck the gardener ship, and this time they worked. Not because the weapons were stronger, but because the entity was learning how to hurt them. It studied the gardener shields, found weaknesses that shouldn't exist, exploited vulnerabilities that it created through sheer force of will. The gardener ship recoiled. For the first time in its ancient existence, it felt pain on Earth. Sujin worked in the Psychological Warfare Center, but she was also in the mind of every soldier, every citizen who had chosen to stand and fight. She understood now why the entity had made humans the way they were. Violence, yes, but also creativity. Stubbornness, yes, but also hope. Every trait that made humanity dangerous also made them impossible to fully control or predict. The gardeners were learning this now. They had harvested thousands of species across millions of years. But they had never harvested a species that was already part of something that hunted them. The battle spread across the solar system. Gardener ships tried to retreat, but the entity was faster. It didn't just use human technology. It used everything. Asteroids suddenly changed course, guided by bacteria living on their surfaces. Solar radiation itself seemed to bend, focused by creatures too small to see, but connected to the vast network dot, and it was spreading. The entity sent spores into space, tiny packages of the void infection that had transformed it so long ago. When they touched the gardener ships, they began to grow. The same infection that had trapped the harvester 100,000 years ago was learning, evolving, adapting to gardener biology. The gardener ship screamed. It was not a sound in any physical sense, but every being in the solar system felt it. A psychic howl of species that had never known fear, suddenly understanding terror. 3 of the 17 ships were consumed entirely, the infection spreading through them faster than they could purge it. The others tried to flee, but the entity wasn't done. Through Dong Haiyan's eyes, Haiyan Wu watched as human fighters pursued them, pushing deeper into space than any human vessel had ever gone. Let them go, the entity said through all of them. Let them carry the infection home. Let them tell other gardeners what happens when they return to Earth. Slowly, the connection began to fade. The entity was retreating, sinking back into Earth's core, but it wasn't disappearing. Haiyan Wu could still feel it. a constant presence in the back of his mind. And he could feel every other human too, a faint awareness of billions of minds that had touched and merged, and would never be quite separate again. Donghyun landed his fighter on the flagship, his hands still shaking from the experience. He had fought in battles before, had killed before, but this was different. He had experienced what it meant to be part of something vast and terrible and magnificent all at once. Did we win? Someone asked. Mincio looked at the tactical display. The Gardner ships were fleeing, 14 damaged vessels running from a battle they should have won easily. I think we did. But we also lost something. We're not the same species we were yesterday. Ji Yuan was analyzing the biological data streaming in from around the world. The entity is still connected to us. Not controlling us, but we can sense each other now. Every human can feel every other human on some level. It's faint, but it's there. Is that bad? Tae-soon asked. I don't know. Maybe we'll become something better. Maybe we'll become something worse. But we're definitely something different now. On the surface, people were emerging from their homes, looking at each other with new awareness. They could feel the connection, the faint echo of shared consciousness. Some were terrified. Others were crying with joy at no longer feeling truly alone. Most were just confused, trying to understand what they had become. The Galactic Council ships maintained their distance. The architects watched in silence, studying what had happened with a mixture of awe and fear. They had hoped humanity might survive. They had never expected humanity to win. Elder Vorm sent a message to Hyun-woo. What have you done? Hyun-woo looked out at Earth, at the planet that had always been his home, but which he now understood in a completely new way. We survived. Isn't that what everyone does? You've become something that can defeat the Gardeners. That makes you more dangerous than they ever were. Maybe, Hyun-woo admitted, but we're still human, still capable of choice. The entity gave us power, but it didn't take away our free will. We're still us, just connected now, just stronger. The Council will need to discuss what this means, what you've become. Let them discuss. We're not asking for permission anymore. Earth isn't forbidden. It's not a farm. It's our home, and we'll defend it against anyone who threatens it. Gardeners, architects, or anyone else. Weeks later, deep in space, a Gardener ship drifted silently. The crew was dead, consumed by the infection that had spread through their vessel. But in the ship's organic computers, a message was being compiled. A warning to every Gardener fleet in the galaxy. Avoid Sol System. Avoid Garden 792. The crop has become the harvester. The children have become the parent. Earth is no longer a garden. It is a fortress.